What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, we're looking at my season just gone, 2020-21. I know I did a bit of an end of season stream. That was going to be the last video. Am I milking it at this point? Maybe I am. But I thought I'd do a proper review where I look down at the players I picked, my captaincy titles and stuff like that. There's various different sites you can look at this stuff on as well that all kind of provide a breakdown of the season. So I've listed the ones that I've used for that as well. We'll go through maybe where it went wrong, where some good decisions were made and all that kind of stuff. And because it's not live, obviously there's no questions to take. So I can just get through it. It'll be a little bit more concise and probably a little bit more detailed. The stream was more of a, great, you got this many points, you got this many points, etc. This is all about my team. So this will be the last FPL video of last season, 2020-21. Tomorrow there'll be my first Euro 2020 fantasy video. And obviously when FPL launches, we'll be straight back for the content for that as well. So if you enjoy this one, give it a like, hit subscribe, and let's jump into it. Okay, so first of all, just pretty simple. Going to go through the ranks per game week on the FPL site itself. I'm not going to go through each individual one. I'm just going to talk about it as a whole. And then I've got a few other screens with the rest of them as well. So one thing I would say, right, and this is going to be a bit of what happened last season plus a few thoughts for next season, is at the start of the season, ranks are all over the place, okay? It doesn't take that too many points to get a huge rank increase or a decrease. So you can see straight away, I started 376k. That is such a good game week one, right? Don't be fooled by what your rank is at the end of the season. 370k, right? If you could give me that right now, you say you're going to start next season, you're going to be 370,000 after game week one. I would take that, right? Then I went down to 1 million. Then just inside the top million, then straight away up to 468,000. So that just shows you how quickly it can go. Then it was 200,000, then back down to 500,000, back up to 300k. There's no point worrying at that stage of the season just what your rank is. And it kind of went just up and down, up and down, up and down until around game week 13 and 14 where I started getting green arrows. And again, if you can get to like 37k by game week 16, that's really good, right? Doing YouTube, obviously, you know, I can't. There's always those few people, right? And it's definitely not the majority. I will say that. You know, if I was ranked 200k in game week 16, I'd be like, why are you making videos? You don't know what you're talking about. But that's a pretty good stage of the season to be at. And as we'll come on to later, I think a lot of my calls this season, look, things worked for me this season. Next season, they might not. I'm not sitting here pretending that I've now got the magic formula to a good rank. But I was very consistent in captaincy picks, as you'll see later on. I only went for big hitters. I played the fixtures a lot. I used expected data all the time. And it just really helped me, right? So game week 16, 37k. Then for game week 17, I had a bit of a red arrow, and then it was game week 18 and 19 that really propelled me. Now, this was a weird season in that we had lots of fixture chaos, way more than normal, and some of us people got screwed over at certain times, right? You would have bought a player in and their fixture got postponed, etc. And the same thing happened to me, right? And I don't want to sit here and blow my own trumpet, but I think I handled it quite well around game week 18, 19, because just before that, I had taken out two players who didn't have a double or didn't have a blank. I can't remember exactly what way around it was, but it was Watkins and De Bruyne. And all of a sudden, I bought in players that are now blanking, and now De Bruyne, etc., did have a double game week. So I kind of got screwed over. And the more I looked at it, obviously game week 18, I was thinking, right, so game week 18, I think it was 18 was the blank. Yeah, 18 was the blank and 19 was the double. But because Man United and Man City both had games in both game weeks, there was already 6 players covered. And they also had a good run after that, right? And this is where I think you can't give evergreen advice for FPL because things change every single week. But at that particular point in time, Laporte was injured. So Stones and Diaz were playing every game. And De Bruyne was really good. And when he got injured, Gundogan was such a good option as well that it made sense to have triple City. Later on in the season, and maybe at the start of the season, that wasn't the case. You have to pick and choose. Because Man City, the problem with their players are, you never know when most of them are going to play. Like next season, of course, Diaz will be a shoo-in, week out. But it'll also be 6.5 million. So it won't be coming anywhere near most of our teams, I don't think. That might not be the case. Let's wait and see what the fixtures are like. But that was probably my best play of the season. The wild card let me cover a blank where loads of people used their free hit. And it let me cover the double where I bench boosted and got 145 points, which was my best week of the season. And that kicked me from 41k right up to 3k. And once you're there, obviously the aim is just to stay there. And I did do that quite well. I had triple digits for quite a lot. And obviously the Man United and Man City players pulled me through. But of course, using your wildcard that early does mean that other people are holding on to it. So they're going to have a boost later on. But I think, would I consider an early wildcard next year? I would. But the circumstances, in my opinion, at the time were perfect. And so using it that early, yeah, I probably would wait. Next year, we'll have a more normal schedule. We'll know that there'll be doubles in game week 30, probably 34, 37, something like that. That's when they usually are. And so saving the wild could be better. But that was just a perfect scenario. Man United, Man City, great fixtures, really good options, and it worked out well. And obviously I kept the triple digits, but I never really pushed on to get past it. Like 479th was my best rank, and that was in game week 22. And I never got back to triple digits, right? So in game week 28, I was 957th, and that was it. I never had triple digits again. Did I play it incorrectly? Possibly. A lot of people used their free hit in game week 29, got like 50, 60, 70 points. I only got 43. So that would have been a big increase. But saving the free hit for later on in the season for the double, so it was game week 35, that let me manage the rest of the game weeks a little bit easier because I wasn't worried about players that were going to blank or double or whatever. And I ended up on 1,294, which I'm quite happy with. Yes, I could have got back into triple digits if I captained Mane, but I'm not going to dwell on that forever. And I missed out on Lingard. But again, I don't know if I've learnt much from Lingard. He went on a hot streak. Right, we knew it wasn't going to continue. I ended up getting him, and it didn't continue. Right, it was never going to happen. It's same with Willock. Now people will be looking at Willock because he scored 7 in 7. He's just I'm not saying he's a bang average player, but he's a bang average FPL option, I would assume, for next year. He might get a bit of a price increase. He'll be at Arsenal. Will he play week in, week out? Will he score 7 in 7? Absolutely not. So I don't know if I've learned a huge amount from that situation, other than sometimes, earlier on in the season, I probably got a bit more luck, and later on in the season, maybe got a little bit less luck. It evened out, and I did okay. But as we'll come on to in a minute, which is probably a little bit more interesting, is the players I picked in the captaincy, and I was very consistent. So 1,294th is the rank. These are my previous ranks. So apart from the 3 that I've highlighted, I'm pretty happy. I think I've never finished, 3 seasons out of 11, I've finished outside the kind of top 90k. But otherwise, I've always been in the top, 21,000? Out of for like 8 out of 11 seasons, I think now, which is pretty decent. So yeah, hopefully I can just kick on. So in the last 5 years now, I've had 2 top 5k finishes, another 12,000 or 21,000. The 162k, look, most of you know now I got hacked, but I still made some pretty poor decisions. I went on tilt, and I find it much easier to refocus afterwards. So if you look at my previous ranks, 104k, then into 8k, 92k, but then into top 5k, 162k, nearly top 1k. So it's like I refocus. So I've got to do that next year, even though I've had a good rank. But let's have a look at a few more sites and other things that have been quite interesting. This is on PremierFantasyTools.com, and a couple of the other sites have also got a bit of analysis on captains. But I did mostly get returns. Now, some of the returns are quite low, right? So De Bruyne in game week 13 got 8 points, right? So he got 4. That was doubled to 8. That included the game where I think it was against West Brom. And he basically got a bonus point even though he got no attacking return, so you could class that as a blank. But otherwise I didn't blank too often. You can see here most of the names are the same, and most of that was all through expected data plus fixtures, right? And one thing which I've banged on about a lot this year is I picked these captains most of the time in advance, and I always made sure that I knew ahead of time that, okay, if I don't own De Bruyne for game week 11, well, look, I want to captain him 2 out of 4 games. Does he need to come into my side? How am I going to get him in? And obviously sometimes injuries and stuff like that dictate your decisions, but captaincy is huge, right? It can make a good week into a great week. It can make a bad week into a good week. And it sounds obvious, I know. You get the points doubled, right? So it's a pretty important thing. But I do think sometimes people build their teams and then they don't choose the captain until they get to the week, which is fine. But it's such an important part that it should play a big decision in your strategy for transfers going forward. You would have seen, like, if any of you watched FPL Black Box, I think they quite consistently spoke about future captains, and that's the first time I focused on it so heavily, which sounds stupid, right? But I did, and I picked in advance. And one of the reasons I picked in advance is it stopped me getting caught up with form, like form of defenses, the form of the players around them, because realistically you can't decide that based on a week. Like sometimes you see a team would defend really well. Oh, will I still captain Kane now against this defense that's played well, even though Kane's been smashing it for the whole season? Or it might be that, I chose Salah, but De Bruyne got a goal the week before, so now it's like De Bruyne is in form now. Should I go for De Bruyne instead? Form is okay, we can talk about it, but I don't think it's necessarily the best way to predict when a player is going to keep scoring. It's like Lingard. Everyone told me at the time, he's in form, he's full of confidence. Well, he stopped scoring. So what made him stop scoring? Well, realistically, it was just never going to keep up. So we saw on the last day, Mane, great stats all season, finally put them into play. Of course, stats aren't perfect. I'm not saying they are, because you can't 100% predict when someone's going to do well. But I do think picking captains in advance is good. Like for game week 3 and 4, I picked Salah and he got 5 and 13. But at that time, De Bruyne had done okay in the first 2 games, and I remember people picking him, and I'm not sure they would have if he hadn't scored in the previous 2 weeks. So I stuck with Salah and he did really well. Again, of course, next season I could do something similar and it not work out, but it's definitely something I'm going to carry through. So transfers for captaincy should play a massive part. The 1 week where I didn't have the player that I thought was the best option was game week 9. I think that was the only week. Game week 9, where I had Rashford. And to be honest, Rashford against I think it was West Brom. It's always West Brom. Wasn't a bad option. But Fernandes was the one that I thought was the best option. I didn't have him. And he got the penalty. He got 10 points, I think. And Rashford only got 3. But outside of that, only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 blanks in 38 weeks. It's not that bad. It could be better. But I'm pretty happy with it. So just a few more to look at. So this is on FPL Retro. Again, you just need your team ID. So if you click on View Gameweek History, in the URL, you'll have a number. That's your FPL ID. So yeah, I basically put this in here. This is just some interesting stuff. So the most captain player was Salah. Now, it's going to be interesting going into next season how much they price these players at, because obviously we know how good Salah is, right? Another season he's hit 20 goals. He's had 4 great seasons for Liverpool now, but his underlying stats have dropped a little bit. He's still a good player, obviously, even a great player, you could say, but they have dropped down a little bit. So it'll be interesting to see how he plays next year. But I captained him 14 times. Most captain player. Why not? He's been so good for ages. It hasn't let up. He's been great. My best game week was 19. It says 141 points. Maybe I took a hit. I got 145. Perhaps I took a hit. Gundogan was the performance of the season, where that's where he got 19 points and then came off and missed the second game. What could have been if he played that second one as well? My total captain score was 618, which I went through just a minute ago. But I could have had 1,083. I'm going to assume that's if I captain the highest score in my team every week. It's going to be, if you did that, you would win FPL easily. That's like 450 points extra. Could I improve a bit? Yes, definitely. I think sometimes I probably missed out on a big score. I've got like a 6 or a 5 into like 10 and 12. And yeah, obviously it's better to hit double digits, but I still rather get a return than not, basically. Most overall points, Salah 315, Kane 234. This is including captain. Fernandes 170. My best period was game week 18 to 22. Like I said, the early wildcard absolutely smashed it for me. That was the defining point of my season. And the worst was game week 6 to 10. But again, rank went from 204k to 323, whatever. Like, it doesn't really matter. But the Fernandes point is interesting, right? So this is another website, a new plot. I don't know. It's been around for ages. It's a really good site. You should use it. I'm assuming that's how you pronounce it. So there's a couple of things here. I got this screen as well, which I'll talk about in a minute. It's all from the same site. So on the left is points per game. Now, you have to take it with a little bit of a pinch of salt, because most people will put cheaper defenders in. So you can't just say, well, defenders are worse because you only got 4.85 points per game for the defenders that you played, because of course you're spending less money. So what that proves to me there is that spending less on defenders for the most part is the play, right? I definitely didn't make too many defender transfers in the early part of the season, which worked really well for me. I just let the attacking players like Lamptey and Dallas just do their thing. Lamptey never really turned out all right, but it was better just to hold him than use the transfer, and that's definitely something I'm going to take through to next year. So you don't need to go in with Trent, Robertson, Diaz and Luka Dean, for example. The points per game for defenders for their price is decent. As always, midfielders' points per game do come out a little bit higher. Again, part of that probably is that realistically, apart from Vardy for a very small stint in my team, the only expensive striker I've had is Kane. Everyone else is like Calvert-Lewin, Bamford, Antonio, Morpay, etc. So you'd expect the points per game to be a little bit lower. But I do think midfielders generally, like if you're stuck between two players, okay, if it's Harry Kane, it's difficult. But most of the time, you're looking to captain midfielder, unless next year they change the way. They make players like Salah could be a forward, for example. That's something a lot of people have talked about. Unless they do that, midfielders are always going to be the place to be for captain. Extra point for a goal, extra point for a clean sheet. You know the drill. And that was the same for my team. So midfielders 6.09 points per game is probably about what I would expect. The amount. This is another bit on Capsy, but basically you can see here. This is the middle bit I'm talking about now. I only captained 9 different players. So Salah, Kane, De Bruyne, Fernandes, Son, Aubameyang, Rashford, Gundogan, Bamford. Now, in hindsight, captaining Salah in Game Week 1 instead of Aubameyang would have been really good because it was a promoted team. And maybe I just got a bit too hyped up on Aubameyang like a lot of people. But he was only in there for the first 2 weeks, right? And then most of us got rid and I never got him back again. But Salah 14 times, Kane 9, De Bruyne 5. I only captained Fernandes 3 times and I think he blanked in one of them as well. I captained Son twice. That would have probably been when Kane was out. And then Rashford, Gundogan and Bamford. But Bamford only because of the double game week in 25. Gundogan because of the double game week as well. And Rashford because I didn't have Fernandes. One of my lessons or tips at the start of the season that I was going to follow myself was to not punt on the captaincy. Always pick a proven heavy hitter. And I think I stuck with that. Going Bamford was fine because his stats were just like a big hitter anyway. And plus, there wasn't any other good, really, apart from maybe Rafinha, who I think outscored him, double game week options that week. So I stuck with what I said at the start of the season, and it really works. And I'll do the same next year. Look, it's not, maybe for some people it's not as fun, like going for that fun punt pick, like Gareth Bale, for example, when a few people got him in the double. But after that, Bale didn't really do what we wanted him to anyway, and I don't think many people captained him. So sticking with the proven hitters definitely worked. And then just on the right is just the points per game average at certain periods of the season. I averaged pretty much the same for the first half and the second half, 66.8 and then 67.4. If anything, that's probably about right because the doubles happened both in the second half of the season and the first half. And obviously there's just a few more bits there about, when the average went up 20 to 28. Again, that's when I had those 3 Man City, 3 United, and it worked really well. This page is really interesting. So this tells you a lot of info, but part of it on the left is how many times you played a player in your team. So Salah was in my game week team for 35 weeks. I did transfer him out at one point. I can't remember why, but I did transfer him out at some point and then got him back. So only 35 weeks. 1 week I benched him. That was probably when he blanked or something. I'm not quite sure about that. I can't remember. Martinez for 26. Son was in there for 25 weeks. I think I sold Kane and Son twice this season. I think that's another thing that I changed. I wasn't afraid to get rid of big hitters if it meant getting in a big hitter that I thought was better for captaincy. Fernandes I was a bit slow on getting on the uptake, and I only had him for 15 weeks of the season, which is quite low considering that he was the highest scoring player. Now, I don't want to sit here and say, look, that just shows you there's more ways to skin a cat, as the saying goes, that I still got a good rank and I didn't have Fernandes for more than, I had Fernandes for less than half a season and he was the highest scoring player, but it's all about getting on them at the right time. And okay, I missed out on a few points at the start, because I just didn't think he could keep it up. But then I got him in, he did well, and I took the risk to get rid of him at the end of the season. He did basically nothing apart from the double, and I free hit him back in anyway. So I think that's one thing I'll try next year. It's very difficult if you're always looking at ownership and stuff to do that. But if you've got Fernandes and he's just scored really well for 3 games, but De Bruyne or Kane or Son or Salah, whoever you don't own, is about to have 3 even better fixtures, then making that switch is probably something that you should consider. Look, I'm not saying going for Fernandes for 15 weeks when he's top scorer was a good play, but it's worked out okay. Bamford was in for 23, and look, people still say to me now, you said that Bamford was someone worth avoiding. I mean, my avoid video at the start of the season is always about the first game week, not necessarily for the whole season. But yeah, I got it wrong. But do you know what I did? I wasn't stubborn about it, and I got him in. I kept him for a long time, and then when his fixtures really turned, I sold him. I got away with it. because why not? It's fixtures, right? And then I got him back in for the end of the season. So that is a proper case of not being stubborn on a player. With Dallas, I got rid of him at one point. That was a mistake. I won't go into the Alonso transfer again. But I owned him for 18 weeks, same as Harry Kane. And Calvert-Lewin for 18 weeks as well. Like, Calvert-Lewin would have been very easy to hold on to, but he did start dropping off after his initial burst for the first kind of 10 or so game weeks. And yeah, eventually I got rid of him. Grealish for 16 weeks. He was great. He was basically, underlying stats wise, he was Bruno Fernandes without penalties. So I'd be interested to see his price next year. But yeah, overall a good mix of players. Some definitely in my team a lot more than others. But that's what I think. If I could say a few things that I'm going to take through from this year into next year, it's captaining heavy, big hitters, right, every week without fail, because it's most likely where you're going to get your points from. Don't be afraid to sell players to get better captaincies, even if they're big hitters. And not ignore form, but if you've thought about captaining a player or bringing in a player, really ask yourself what has changed if you've changed your mind. Because if it's just that someone else has scored recently, that's not a good indicator of whether it's going to keep happening necessarily. So that's probably the three things that I'll take into next year. But yeah, that's my season. Let me know how yours went. Let me know how you kind of reviewed it. But obviously I'm pretty happy. The rank was good. But I think the way I played this season was decent. And I want to take a lot of those thought processes into next year, when I may or may not get a good rank. We'll have to wait and see. There we go. That is it for this one. Please do give it a like and hit that subscribe button if you are new around here. If you enjoyed it, of course. Hopefully it was in some way useful. I'm sure there's probably something I've missed out when talking about my previous season. But obviously at the start of next season, we'll have kind of tips and stuff for, you know, how to improve your rank and all that kind of usual good stuff, and with the things that I've learned this year as well. That will now be, I think, the final FPL video for 2020/21. Because I don't think there's really too much more to talk about, right? I'm sure most people have switched off. I will be doing Euro 2020 fantasy content. That is my most asked question right now. Even though I've put it on Twitter, I've put it on the YouTube community page, I've mentioned it on streams, videos. Yes, I'm doing content. It will start tomorrow on Wednesday. I know not everybody watches this channel for other stuff other than FPL, but the thumbnails will be... You'll know that they're my thumbnails, but you'll also know they're for the Euros. So just don't click on them if you don't want to watch it. The FPL content will be back as soon as it goes live. I will be live streaming and we'll put out all the usual content that I do throughout pre-season. So there's loads more to come. Thank you for all the support this season. I think I'm officially done now until FPL launches, apart from for the Euro stuff, which is starting tomorrow. And I'll have another video for that on Thursday, so plenty more to come. Give this one a like, hit subscribe. I hope your seasons went well. Whether they did or didn't, we'll be back next season to make it even better. So thanks for watching this year, and I'll see you, well, tomorrow probably.